Welcome, everyone, to the Friday afternoon series. Debbie McRae joins me once again for this. She always has such a wealth of information, and I point so many people back towards her previously recorded webinar. So we welcome you, whether you're joining us in person, well, online now, or in real time, I guess that's the right way, or if you're watching the videos. If you're watching the videos, come join us. Join us on all of these webinars. We like having the interaction and input from that. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Debbie. What do you got for us today?
Well, I have put together a title for today's webinar, and we're going to talk about from disconnection to connection, what every betrayed partner needs from the betrayer to support their healing. And I'm going to share with you once again what I am seeing in my office and what my group members come into group talking about. So I want to give a little bit of an introduction. As you know, codependence has an attachment-based focus on how we approach betrayal and how we approach addiction and how we approach connection. With discovery and disclosure, the attachment in the relationship is disrupted, it's destroyed, and in that moment, there is so much trauma for the betrayed partner. So the connection is completely ruptured. So, in that recovery and healing process, the attachment has to be repaired. And the repair should be facilitated by the betraying partner. So, I'm going to give you some ideas and some ways today. So, we're going to talk about maybe what the betrayed partner presents with, and then I'm going to give the betraying partner, the addict partner, some ideas on how you might handle that and support them in their recovery and their healing. So, I see a couple of things come into my office. Um, I've seen this quite often. We are working on connection in couples session, and the betraying partner repeatedly says, I just don't know that I can stay in the relationship because if he doesn't stop being defensive, if he can't get to a place of empathy, I can't stay. And so we have to work on that in the couple session, but also the betraying partner needs to be doing work on that in their own individual work as well. I also have betrayed partners coming in and sharing he's doing everything he can, to help me in my recovery. And he asks me what he can do to help me. And right now, I just don't know. And so we need to work in their individual session on figuring out what it is they need for recovery. So hopefully today I can give ideas to both the betrayed partner and the betraying partner on this. So I want to make a few points. One of the biggest point I want to make is that we heal in relationships. It is connection with other people that helps support us in working through difficult things. And when we are attached to somebody else, it is so much easier. The problem that comes up though in betrayal is that the betraying partner is the one who's the source of the pain for the betrayed partner. So it's really hard to turn to somebody who has inflicted emotional pain. But in today's webinar, we're going to talk about triggers that the betrayed partners might have, and then how that, like I said, the betraying partner can respond. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just some specific situations that I see come up. I know that there are others, but these are the ones that I see most often. So in situation number one, we have the betrayed partner experiencing shock and disbelief as they are trying to come to terms with their new reality. So this is part of the grieving process, that shock and denial, disbelief stage. So in this particular incident, we see the betrayed partner just can't believe what's happened. All of a sudden, their reality has been blown out of the water. So this occurs in the early days and moments of disclosure and discovery. Oftentimes, betrayed partners are so overwhelmed, they shut down and they start to question their life and what it is now. It just doesn't feel real. Now, sometimes the betrayed partner may have feelings of shame that come up that they didn't see this happening or that this is their reality. And so sometimes they're dealing with that and they don't know what to do or who to turn to. So in these moments, what the betraying partner can do is they need to recognize that their partner's reality has just been turned upside down. And they need to be available to offer emotional support. Oftentimes, that comes in the form of the betrayed partner needs to do a lot of talking And so the betraying partner needs just to sit and listen and even answer questions. We're going to talk a lot about that as I move through these different scenarios and how to do that. You never criticize the betrayed partner's emotions because may go from shock and disbelief all of a sudden into anger. There's only one exception, and that is rage. Rage is when we have not only anger, but it's combined with other really distressing emotions, and that can lead to domestic violence. So in that case, we do need to call a timeout. We do need to create safety, and we don't stay in it if there is rage involved. So that's really important, not only for the betraying partner, but for the betrayed partner both. You need to be very supportive and encouraging. You need to encourage them to get support and help. Don't deny them that. Let them reach out to trustworthy people. Don't make them feel like they have to keep your secret. Let them know what it is you're going to be doing and what your recovery is going to look like. What are your next steps? Because they need to know in this moment, my world's been turned upside down. What are you going to do about it? So you may hear those types of words. Another situation is the betrayed partners dealing also with confusion about everything. And so I call this kind of this phase in those early months when they're in this state of crisis. I call it putting the puzzle pieces together. They are trying to feel and understand and acknowledge and make sense of everything that's been going on around them. So the betrayed partner might be really disoriented. During this phase, they might be forgetful, they might be disorganized, they might not be able to think straight, they might ask questions repeatedly, they move into wanting the details of all the events, and they may move into some of that safety seeking. I'm going to try to find all the information I can. So I'm either going to search through things like phones and emails, bank accounts, or I might be coming back to the betraying partner and asking lots of questions. I'm really just trying to figure out how I can be safe. When I'm a betrayed partner, I'm doing that. So what the betraying or the addict partner needs to do is they have to be gentle and kind. If you can just recognize that this is the betrayed partner trying to find safety, then you can step back and not take it so personal. You need to bear with the partner going through that. You need to, in this moment, respond with patience and respond with understanding and provide all the questions, the answers to all the questions. And then be proactive and give access to everything like phones and emails and passwords. And during this time, don't criticize, don't minimize, and don't get defensive. That's very, very difficult when the betrayed partner is going into this safety seeking and trying to put all the puzzle pieces together. So what you've got to do is do your very best to hold space for them and for the information that they need. Situation number 3 happens when the betrayed partner goes into their safety seeking behaviors even deeper and they have this need to know. It's kind of like putting the puzzle pieces together, but now we're going even deeper into it. I'm trying to understand past and I'm understanding the present, and now I'm worried about the future. So with this, we do have betrayed partners who are asking questions on repeat. They might be going more and more into asking more details very specifically. There might be a lot of why questions that come up during this period of time, and they're going to search for evidence in a variety of ways. So for you as the betraying addict partner, what you can do, like I mentioned earlier, is just answer all of the questions honestly and sufficiently. Now, let's put some boundaries around that, though. I do believe that as the betraying partner, you need to provide all of that data and the information. But we need to put a boundary around how it's done. We don't want to do it 10 o'clock at night and talk about it way into the wee hours of the morning because chances of staying emotionally regulated decrease. That's like I tell the people I work with, you need to be well fed and well rested to have difficult conversations. So that's one time we want to put a little bit of a boundary around it. We may want to also put a day. Hey, hold all your questions and let's talk about it, right? Maybe every other day. Or if we're doing a check-in, let's do it at night when we do our check-ins. You might even be more proactive and ask them, what information do you need in this moment to feel safe? so that you're open, you're committed to honesty, and you're showing it proactively. Don't refuse to answer the questions. If you don't know the answer, you say, I don't have an answer to that. Let me think on that. Let me go work with my therapist on that, and I will come back to you with that answer. There are times, though, we put a boundary around asking questions, and it's typically around when we're going to do a formal therapeutic disclosure. Oftentimes, we will tell the betraying partner, write your questions down. Let's submit them for the formal therapeutic disclosure process rather than going to your partner repeatedly to get the information that you need. It's important, though, that the betraying partner does not keep their partner in the dark about anything. And again, if we have a formal therapeutic disclosure in place, that is such a great container for doing this, rather than doing it every day of the week, way into the hours of the night when we're tired and we're already in crisis. It typically doesn't go well. Be truthful. Fill in the gaps if it's possible. And like I said earlier, if you don't know, then work on that. Follow up with giving them that information. Apologize. If you can see they're in pain and you're sharing hard things, recognize this is hard to hear. And understand that the why questions that the betrayed partner has is really an expression of their pain. It's, I just need to know what's going on. And when I know what's going on, then my emotional pain decreases. Don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's really about the pain they're experiencing. Situation number 4. Sometimes betrayed partners lack self-control and they have trauma triggers. So you see betrayed partners having these distressing emotions. And I think of these distressing emotions like anger and frustration and sadness as really them protesting the fact that the attachment has been wounded, that they've been betrayed. And so you will see them experience crying, and they may have a hard time controlling that. Like I said, frustration, anger, they may express resentment. There could be bitterness, there could be despair. These are really, really hard emotions to be in the presence of. But the betrayed partner is going to have a difficult time controlling those emotions in the early days and months. But later on, as the betrayed partner gets the skill set and to be able to control their emotions and have that emotional regulation, you're going to find that their brain is not hijacked as often. And pretty soon, as they're working through recovery, they'll start to be able to recognize when they're moving into a trigger and have the skill set and the tools to regulate. But in the meantime, the betraying partner needs to support the betrayed partner by allowing them to have those emotions. Don't minimize. Don't criticize them when they have those emotions. Sometimes you need to let them vent. Again, we want to do this in a boundaried way. Again, the right time, the right place, in the right way. Be patient and be patient on repeat. And sometimes you have to just sit and listen without disrupting the betrayed partner. It's really hard because as the one in recovery, oftentimes that shame comes up and you want to defend yourself. You want to offer explanations. So just expect that anger is going to surface. These difficult emotions are going to come up because it is part of the grieving process for the betrayed partner. You need to understand that there's so much going on for the betrayed partner that oftentimes their feelings don't often synchronize with what's actually going on in the moment. So you may have had a really great morning. You think things are on the up, and all of a sudden you come home from work and you've got a betrayed partner who is stuck in their anger and extremely angry. At that point, you're going to want to use empathy and validation. So if you're having a difficult time with what do I say, how do I show empathy, how do I validate, work with your therapist. If you're in a group, take it to your group and talk to them about, here's briefly the situation, how do I respond with that empathy and validation that my partner needs. Understand what triggers your betrayed partner. If a trigger is you taking a phone into the bathroom, don't take the phone in the bathroom. If the trigger is you're not scheduling your appointments out several weeks in advance, or you're skipping out on your group, those things are going to be triggers for betrayed partners. And it's really important, though, that when a betrayed partner is in those distressing emotions, that you turn to them rather than criticizing, explaining, getting defensive. what you want to do instead is ask them what they need. They may know, they may not know. If they don't know, then just offer to be there for them when they do decide what it is they need, and then try to meet their needs to the best of your ability. Situation number 5 is the need for the betraying partner to take responsibility. I see this one a lot. The betrayed partner really, they need apologies. They need to hear specific ways that the addict partner recognizes their hurt. Sometimes I see that the betrayed partners want to inflict pain and hurt back on the betraying partner so that they can understand just how deep their pain goes. I hear often partners come in and say, I just need him to hurt as much as I do. Or they say it in various forms. I just wish he could understand how deep this pain goes. He just doesn't get it. So they may repeatedly ask you, do you really understand how much you've hurt me? And they may want you to kind of share back with them the ways you understand how you have hurt them. They may get very anxious and angry about any lack of progress in your recovery. Take responsibility for that. They may even be more traumatized if they see that you're not taking responsibility and do what you need to do. And I'm going to stop and take a really quick drink. Okay, so how do you support, that your betrayed partner? So verbalize what your recovery plans are. Get into therapy and stick with it on a regular basis. Apologize with genuineness and with sincerity. So if you're having a hard time getting to that space, work with your therapist. Don't just say, I'm sorry. Be specific with your apology. So it might sound like, I am so very sorry. I can see that my lying and my deceiving has really hurt you and hurt you in a big way. Or it might sound like, I acknowledge I betrayed your trust and I will do whatever I can to earn it back. Maybe even ask, what do you need? What do you need right now for that? So also, the betrayed partner needs to understand that you, as the addict partner, really is aware of your gaslighting, and you have to learn what they are and how to stop them. So some of the ones we see a lot is your betrayed partner comes to you with those strong, difficult emotions, and you minimize them. Or you're having a really difficult conversation, and you put an abrupt end to it and walk away. Or you shift the blame. I call it turning the tables. We also call it DARVO, which stands for defend, attack, and reverse right the victim and make them the offender. So we're turning the tables. Another one is not responding, the silent treatment. All of those things are gaslighting, and they immediately create more disconnection in the relationship. You need to share your own feelings about your own shame and the own grief and sadness that you have, and let them know on repeat that you are committed to your recovery and in supporting your betrayed partner's recovery. So do that consistently and then show them through your actions. Situation 6, which is the last one, you might find that the betrayed partner controls the betraying partner's recovery. So what you see is the betrayed partner may be watching you, the addict partner, like a hawk to see what you're doing. They're very, very aware. You may find that they make lots of suggestions because they really want this relationship to heal. So not only are they making lots of suggestions, they may even give you recommendations on what you need to look at, like podcasts, books to read, what you should and should not do. And they may have some really strong distressing emotions when they see a lack of recovery work, especially if you're having a slip and you're not reporting it, if you're not willing to sit down and do check-ins like they need, right? They want to see that you are consistently doing your recovery work over time. That's what helps them to rebuild the trust, also the openness and the honesty. So what you can do as a betraying partner to support the betrayed partner is be proactive in seeking out and moving forward in your own recovery. So reach out and find a therapist who's qualified. Get into a 12-step group. Find a sponsor. Find a group that will help you work on your recovery and go consistently every week. Be willing to do check-ins. Figure out a couple of ideas for check-ins, and then you're going to need to be in charge of the one who sets up the time for the check-in, and then is the one who actually goes to your partner and says it's time for check-in if necessary. You've got to work on staying grounded also and out of your shame, especially when your betrayed partner questions your recovery work. You're going to want to get defensive. It's human nature, but keep in mind that she's questioning you. She's asking for accountability because she really wants the best for you. She wants the best for her, and she wants the relationship to heal. So I want to kind of circle back around to what I said in the very beginning, and that is we do heal in relationships. And as the betraying partner, if you can recognize that the betrayed partner oftentimes goes into behaviors because they just want to feel better. They just want the situation to get better and they want the relationship to heal. And they want it to heal sooner than later. And we do know that recovery takes time. For the betrayed partner, it's anywhere from 18 months to 3 years. For those in recovery, it's 3 to 5 years. And we want to do it together in relationship. We want to do it staying as connected as possible. It is a skill set that you will learn. And at some point, once you're well into your recovery, you're regulated, then you're going to want to come together and do couples work because that's where you can really get in and have those hard conversations and start to put boundaries around your healing. Express your support to your betrayed partner and their healing and on healing your relationship. So if you need to, offer to do a formal therapeutic disclosure if the betrayed partner needs it. Make couples appointments when the time is right. You be in charge of that. Don't ask the betrayed partner to do that. And then take charge of your check-ins, like I mentioned. All of those things, if you do it consistently and you do it over time, create safety in the relationship and creates more connection. And then lastly, my recommendation would be is to find a good therapist who really understands shame, because I see this as being the biggest blocker to connection in relationships. Especially when you're in recovery, shame is a big factor. So recognize it, know when it's coming up, know what you say when you go into it. But learn how to validate and learn how to have those skills of empathy, because that's really the connection point right there. It is a higher level skill set when you're in recovery, but you can learn early on in those early days in working with a therapist and with the group as to exactly how you might say it as you're gaining those skills. So hopefully this gives you some ideas on when we have a difficult situation, a point of disconnection, here's what I can do to connect again as the betraying partner.
Great stuff. And I actually did type some notes for myself. And one of the things you were talking about, like the why your partners are looking for the safety and things like that. And they're also, and I think you would find this regularly too, is they're also looking at what's wrong with me. So there's all of this, like, if I just understand the why, then I can go fix me, or I can, bubble wrap you. And yeah, and I often say the why is of interest, but how do we move forward? What do we need to do today? And that can be grounding to just go, like, all of that stuff, we'll figure it out at some point. But like you said, it's a journey. And for betrayed partners, yes, and nobody wants to hear that. They're like, we've been doing this for 3 weeks. We should be better, and so having that hard hearing of, gosh, it's going to be, this is the long haul. This is not a quick fix. Both partners want a quick fix. Who doesn't? We would rather be through this awful stuff that we have to go through. And that's just not reality. The problem didn't happen overnight. And so it's not going to be magically fixed. But these are very useful tools, kind of higher order. This is, not something you're going to apply in the first 2 weeks of, of discovery. So these are just tools, that we're sharing that you can have a vision for, or start trying little pieces of it as you're gaining skills. So the first question, and please ask questions about this or anything else. How can the betraying partner ground themselves when they are swallowed in shame?
That's such a great question. I'm going to just talk a little bit about when I work with betrayed partners with shame and some of the approaches that I take. So hopefully this will give you some ideas. Oftentimes the betrayed partner, we're talking about the betraying partner. Oftentimes the betraying partner doesn't even recognize shame. In fact, they've never even understood shame. And it's very interesting because I base a lot of what I'm saying off of Brene Brown's research on shame. And that is that shame is an emotion that we experience when we're very, very young. Um, the belief is that shame is the first emotion that we feel. So shame becomes kind of a protective emotion when we're very, very young. The problem is when we're in our shame, shame has a tendency to have us hide. So when I'm young and I'm a little child and I have shame, my shame actually makes me get smaller. And when I'm smaller, I'm safer. The unfortunately is when I have an addiction and I'm in my shame tells me to hide. My shame tells me to not, to keep things hidden. My shame tells me I'm bad. My shame really is running the show because in our brain, we have connections, we have wiring. I call it these assumptions, what we call negative core beliefs that are shame based. So something comes along in life, and as a betrayed partner, I know I've made mistakes. I know I have made choices that are hurting and have affected my partner. And when all of a sudden I'm faced with it, my brain goes right back into those negative beliefs of I am bad, I am broken, I'm not good enough. And this is so unconscious, we're not even aware of it. So we have to first of all identify what are those negative core beliefs that I'm running. And a therapist can help you with that. Sometimes, go to a list of negative core beliefs and you'll be able to identify, yes, when I think about me in this addiction and how it's affected my partner, right? Or the fact that now I've got to do something with it. What is the belief I have about myself? So shame will cause us to do three things. The first thing when we're in our shame is it causes us to go into fear. So in this fear, I'm fearful of how other people perceive me, but I'm also in fear about how I perceive myself. The other thing that it'll have us do is it'll have us go into judgment. So I start judging myself, or I'm afraid of other people judging me. And the third thing is when we're in fear and when we're in judgment, it moves us into a state of disconnection. So I typically disconnect by going into a fight, flight, or freeze response. So if I'm in anger, right, that's a fight. If I am in a flee, I'm going to run away and get out of there, right? I'm going to turn around and walk away and not have a hard conversation. Or if I'm in freeze, I'm going to shut down. So when we talk about grounding, we're talking about I'm triggered, my brain goes into action. I feel it in my body, and we all feel shame differently. And I work my clients through where do you feel that shame in your body, right? What's that shame telling you? And then it moves us into that action. So we're going to go into that disconnection, fight, flight, freeze. Okay. So what you're going to have to do as a betraying partner is you've got to recognize what your same message is. What does your shame say to you? What is the stories that it takes you in? And then when you're in that, how do you react? So you get the moment once you recognize you're in it, you're triggered, I'm in my shame. If you're go defensive, then you're going to have to do stuff to ground you and getting defensive. So with that, you're going to have to challenge things. You're going to have to do some self-care, some emotional regulation tools. You might need to take a pause in a conversation if you're with your betrayed partner. So you want to call that effective timeout, where you just take a pause on the conversation, step away, get grounded by doing self-care, breathing, whatever you need to do to emotionally regulate, and then you re-engage. If you call the timeout, you have to re-engage, and you need to do it within a 24-hour window. Ideally, when you take the pause, you let your partner know, I need a half an hour, I need an hour, I'm in my shame. Okay. If it's flight and I just want to get out of there, or I want to kind of turn around and blame you and run, then we've got to recognize exactly, again, what are the stories I'm in? What do I tell myself even about my betrayed partner, right? And then I've got to challenge those. And I've got to learn how to emotionally regulate in the moment and sit in a hard conversation. So, how do you ground yourself in a hard conversation? I will tell couples and the betraying partners, make sure you're well fed, well rested, like I mentioned. Set a specific time. If you need to work on something hard and you know your shame's going to come up, bring a notebook. You want to use reflective listening. So, with reflective listening, you're going to sit and let whoever needs to speak do the talking. So, they kind of have the talking stick. You're going to sit and just listen. You can take notes if all of a sudden things come up that you want to address. But what you're listening for in that moment is the feeling words, the emotions that you can address and come back and talk about. So once the person is finished talking, then you ask permission. Can I respond to that? And the first thing you do is you reflect back what you hear them saying. So you're going to use their words to make sure you understand where they're coming from before you move into using your I statements, right? Like, I see and hear, right? I feel, I need, or even validating. I hear you saying you need, and you reflect back and you can stay in that hard conversation. It takes a skill set. It takes time. It's really hard. Sometimes you're going to get really activated. So, what do you do when you're really activated in the moment? One thing you can do is the five senses exercise. This will ground you. So, what you're going to do is look for five things that you see in your environment. You can even do this while the conversation's going on. And then notice four things that you feel with your physical body. What's touching your body? Three things that you hear in your environment, two things that you smell or imagine smelling, and one thing you taste or you can imagine tasting. This will bring you back into your body, right? So you can be more present. Again, if you have to, you take that pause to the conversation, but you must come back. Lots of times I will tell somebody who's in their shame and they get triggered, and we're going to take a pause to go and journal using the 4-part talking boundary, where you talk about what you saw and heard that triggered your shame, right? The stories you went into. What did your shame make you feel? And then, right, what is it that you need, right? That's a really great way to get regrounded. The 5 senses technique again is you're going to notice 5 things you see in your environment. And I always like to add a descriptive word. So it might be a round clock, a green tree. So I'm adding it really gets me back into my brain. 4 things that I feel with my physical body. So it could be like my feet on the ground, my seat in the chair, my hair on my face. 3 things that you hear. So it could be like my partner's words. It could be the air conditioning. It could be children in the background. 2 things I smell. And then 1 thing that I taste or I imagine tasting. So I find that I get people back into their bodies and regulated by the time they get to about 3 things that I can hear, because my 5 senses really ground me. So that's how we're going to deal with flight. If it's shut down and you're in such overwhelm that you don't know what to do, again, you're going to have to take the time out. You're going to have to take a pause. You're going to have to step away. One of the best ways to regulate is through connection. Finding somebody that's a supportive friend, like your sponsor, somebody from group, reaching out to your therapist so that they can help you emotionally regulate. Meaning, even when I'm shut down and I'm in overwhelm, I can reach out to somebody and they can help me get more regulated and get back within my window of tolerance. It might be that you need to take a little time to think about stuff. So you may ask your betrayed partner, when we have hard conversations, can you kind of let me know when what we're going to be talking about, and can we set a time so that you have a little pause between when your partner approaches you and when you sit down and have the hard conversation. The other thing that you can do with all of these is come up with a self-compassion statement. The antidote to shame is self-compassion. So a self-compassion statement might be, even though I've caused this pain and this hurt in my betrayed partner, I need to recognize that I'm in recovery. I am trying to live a healthier life. I may make mistakes in doing this, but that still makes me good enough. So it's really important that we either have a self-compassion phrase, or you're going to go research Kristen Neff and her 3-step exercise for self-compassion, which very briefly is acknowledging that it's a moment of suffering and how you're suffering. Secondly, recognizing you're not alone in this. We're going to make it very universal. Other people experience it too. And the third thing is the kind messages you're going to give yourself. So it's very, very effective. So those are some of the ways to ground yourself when you're swallowed in your shame. I recognize you also get into a therapist who understands shame. So they can teach you some of the things I just talked to you about. They can take you, into where did it start? It's most likely not just a result of your acting out and all the shame around that, but it's probably that you experienced it from the time you were young. So shame is something, my last thought, excuse me, is shame is interesting. There's layers to it. So with shame, we kind of have one understanding, we peel off one layer, and then there's another layer. But it's possible to get to the root of it. And when you do, there is such a shift and a change, not only in how you feel and think and understand you, but also in how you relate to other people.
I included in the chat Dr. Eddie Caparucci's Inner Child. That's some of that deeper work, and there will be points of recognition within that group. He only offers it twice a year, and it starts next week. I highly recommend that. The other one is Troy Love does the attachment wounds. That one I think is going to start in March. Both of those, and both of the guys recommend each other's work, but those are really helpful for identifying shame, attachment wounds, inner child, and then having the language to go, yeah, that's what's happening for me in this moment. And coming back to the prefrontal cortex, where you have the ability to make an intelligent adult decision rather than going to the inner child or the wound or whatever. Shame is, we talk about this often, a useless emotion. It brings you in, it's self-centered because I'm focused on how bad I am or whatever, or all of the other things. It's like I'm going to deflect all the gaslighting that happens. So learning to identify, this is my shame voice talking, thank you very much. I know you're trying to protect me, and here's what I'm choosing to do. I did also type in the 5 things I see, that so you can capture that as well. But please, those work groups many therapists recommend those along with what they're doing with clients, because it's what you don't get, and many people have learnings and awakenings that they bring to their therapist. It helps them help you. One of the things I wondered about, like with the 5 senses, I was like, if the couple's dysregulated, have you heard of couples going like, wait, let's simultaneously or together do the 5 senses, just to, okay, we're going to have this difficult conversation, let's get grounded before we jump into these things.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I do think that couples need to come up with a plan for having hard conversations and talking about difficult things. And I think if you can do that early on in recovery, it's very, very helpful. And that would be one of the tools that you would add to, right, the structure that you put in place. So something would be helpful for couples would be to identify, and sometimes we talk about this as I call it sometimes our fair fighting agreement, our difficult conversation outline and guidelines, whatever you want to call it. But what it was going to help you do is, how can we stay in a hard conversation and not have our shame take over, right? Or become dysregulated. And I do think that you could do the 5 senses together very easily. So kind of back to what I was saying. So what you might want to do is maybe you schedule certain times of the week to sit down and have hard conversations. Or maybe if you do need to have a conversation, give your partner 12 hours advance notice, or determine, here's the best time of the day for us. It might be after the kids all go to school, or it could be right after dinner. Maybe we go out for a walk and we do it while we're walking, because with that bilateral movement of walking, it's very regulating. Maybe we don't do it in our bedroom. We maybe do it in our walk-in closet, or we do it in an office, or we do it somewhere where we feel more neutral. And then if it's on a certain topic, well, we're going to stick to the topic. We use, reflective listening. We use, some of those, if we're going to set a boundary, maybe we use the 4-part talking boundary. I mean, there's different boundaries you can use, but we already kind of know if we're going to have a hard conversation, here's how we're going to do it. So we can try to stay connected to prefrontal. And prefrontal cortex is that front part of your brain right behind here that's got that area where we need to operate out of so that we're in that highest functioning part of our brain. Because when we're there, we feel good. We're regulated. We're in our bodies. We've got logic, reasoning, emotion regulation, body regulation. And so that's where we want to go. Problem is the brain with its negative bias is looking for anything that senses danger. And then what the brain's going to do is the brain goes back into the files from the past and it assesses the current moment based on the past. And so then we get into moving from prefrontal into that limbic region of the brain. So that's when we get dysregulated. When we're talking about dysregulated, that's what we mean. We're now in fight, flight, freeze, and fawn.
Well, and what you're talking about is like, I go back to that. Well, I might have been 7 when that first happened. So then I've got a 7-year-old showing up for something that needs to be handled by someone of an appropriate age. And so these are tools, like identifying these things. It doesn't magically make it go away. It just gives you the tools to use to go, hey, wait, that's my 7-year-old showing up rather than me. And thank you very much. Like there's so much learning. So give yourself the tools that you need in order to do this differently. And there's lots on our website that can help. So, and speaking of that, like Debbie's going to be prepared, or she's preparing a work group for betrayed partners on boundaries, because that's such a struggle. So that will be another tool late February. There will be an offering. So stay tuned for that. But like, we want to have tools that will be truly helpful for you, each and both, on this journey. So, okay, the next one, Debbie. Is it normal or maybe something else going on when a betraying partner goes into so much shame and self-pity that he is unable to function for hours or days?
I do believe that there's something more going on underneath. And so that would be when you want to get in. There's most likely some trauma associated with it. That would be kind of what I would assess for, because for it to take you to this place of such freeze for that long, and then the self-pity, I don't know what it comes along with the self-pity, but you're right. Those emotions shut you down, especially self-pity. So yes, there's something else going on. So you need to look and see, is there trauma associated with it, right? And get into a therapist who not only understands shame, but has the skill set, the training to do some type of trauma work with you, like eye movement desensitization or reprocessing, which is EMDR, or accelerated resolution therapy, which is an offshoot of EMDR, but where you're working on visual image replacement, or something like brain spotting that works directly in a region of the brain that helps you process trauma. All of those are really, really good. I do believe that when we have deep shame, it does require that we do some type of trauma processing, because shame can go really, really deep. Like I said, we experience shame really early in life. And when we're in our shame, we also have body sensations. My body's feeling it as well. And so when we talk about emotions getting trapped, they're literally in our body. And so part of the work we have to do is to reprocess whatever the events are that are associated with the trauma, where the trauma was created, right? So then we can file it in the brain correctly. And then we see a reduction in shame, in the self-pity. So there's some negative beliefs you have about yourself that are associated to that. And so in a nutshell, I just kind of explained that you may consider finding a therapist who has those tools and who understands shame, and get in and start working on that.
Okay, so you're the queen of boundaries. If I'm the betrayed partner and this is what's happening, how do I construct a boundary so that I'm taking care of me and not having to just take care of the betraying partner, in a shame spiral?
Well, I think what you do in that case is you recognize and validate. It appears as if you're in a shame spiral. I can see you're in self-pity, And, my thinking on that is that it must be really hard for you to be experiencing this, and that this has been going on, and I'm really scared about it, and that something needs to be done. And it makes me really scared when I see you in that state. So, would you be willing to reach out to your therapist, or do you have somebody you can turn to? Because oftentimes, as the betrayed partner, I don't have the capacity, I don't have the bandwidth or the window of tolerance to jump in and rescue, which we shouldn't be doing anyway. But what I can do is I can make a request. Would you be willing to go do this? Would you be willing to, you know, reach out to your therapist? And so I'm not going to jump in and rescue, but I can also recognize, acknowledge, express how it's affecting me, right? My thinking around it, my emotions. And here's what, would you be willing to do this?
And what
Sometimes,
happens if he says no?
well, then at that way, in that case, you're going to offer and say, well, I hope you'll consider that. And I'll check back in with you, right? Tomorrow. You can check back in. You can then reach out to your own therapist for support so that you've got somebody who's kind of guiding you along the way. Now, if they are at a space where they are a threat to themselves, right? Maybe sometimes our shame takes us into suicidality, then we've got to get you the help that you need. So I might call, I know here locally, we have a crisis team that will come out and to your home and meet with you. Or we might call 988 because that's a great resource to get help, especially if you're in that space of shame and self pity. Great number to call is that emergency number that we have when we're in a mental health crisis. So those are also resources for you to use in the moment. As a betrayed partner, I cannot rescue somebody. I cannot fix somebody. We think we can at times and we want to, but the reality is that we need to encourage them to get their own help. And if they are a threat or a danger to themselves, then we need to call whatever extra support we need in.
So I'm going to skip the next one because this one kind of ties into what I was asking to. As a betrayed partner, as the betrayed partner, my betraying partner is in deep shame and self-pity, is turning towards me for support. I feel bad that I can't support him more, but my capacity is limited, and have gently shared with him that he reaches out to his therapist. Is this appropriate? Will this further trigger him? Context is he has yet to provide this kind of support to me, and so it's bringing up resentment on how backwards this feels in our pair process.
Yeah, you're in a really hard spot. First of all, I want to validate that. That's really hard because when you see your partner suffering, right, we want to jump in and help them. But like you said, you don't have the capacity right now, and it's okay. So give yourself the self-compassion on that. Now, a couple of things you might do is you might see if your betraying partner is willing to have you join in a session with him and his therapist. That's something you can do. And then you can give input. Now, before you go in, you and the betraying partner are going to have a plan. And that is, when I go into your therapist, can I share with your therapist what my experience is when you're in shame? Right? And what my fears, my concerns, my worries, whatever it is, are. And can we ask your therapist to help us come up with a plan or help you come up with a plan? And I'm there to not only witness it, but to support you in the ways that I can. So, as a betrayed partner, I have to recognize my capacity. So, that's where it's really important that the betraying partner, in the early days of recovery, you have to get a support system. You have to. You need to be in some type of recovery group. You've got to have a therapist you're seeing. You've got to have those people in your circle of support, like a sponsor, 12-step, all of that, so that it doesn't fall just on the shoulders of the betrayed partner to do all the caring and helping you with your emotions. That is not the betrayed partner's responsibility. So you've got to come up with your own support. And so you may have to work on that in that session. But what we're trying to do is not have the betraying partner dependent on you, the betrayed partner, to manage their emotions. Part of their work in recovery is identifying their shame, understanding their shame, coming up with the skills and tools that they're going to implement when they start to go into their shame or when they're in their shame. And so it is appropriate for you at times to say, I'm at capacity. I don't have the ability to help with your shame. And so what are you going to do? What's your plan? And kind of put it back on them, you know? How do you, and a lot of times they're going to go, they're going to go to this, I don't know, I'm not going to do anything. Well, then maybe you are going to have an agreement that you reach out to a certain person that can then come in and support your betraying partner. So this is really, really difficult. Every situation is different. If I knew more about you, then I could give you specific suggestions, but I'm just giving some general ideas.
And this is, I'm 100%, this is, you need a higher level of help because, and this can be manipulative too. And I'm not saying that he is, I'm just saying I have seen lots of examples of this where I'm going to do all of this. And it, like, you could be in the middle of trying to share something really difficult for you. And all of a sudden he's like, oh, I feel so shameful and so self-pity and all of this completely shuts down your ability to have, share what you are. And the focus turns back to this person. And I know this, we have clients who have come into our residential treatment program who have threatened suicide, and they own at some point that it was completely manipulative. They just wanted to stop that and turn the focus on, the self-care. Again, call 911 if, or whatever help you need. If somebody's actually, like, I don't minimize or take that lightly. If they are threatening suicide, I'm calling 911. It's I can't help you. We need help, whatever you need to do. But like, it would be interesting to see where the patterns are, perhaps journal, like every time, I say something like this is what happens. And that would be great to take into his therapist as well. So yeah,
Let
this
me go back
higher level of help. Yeah.
Let me just say one other thing, and that is you talked about it's bringing up resentment for you because of how
Mhm.
bad it is. Well, resentment is an indicator that either boundaries are being violated or you have to establish boundaries, right?
Mhm.
It's usually either one of those. So in this case, when your partner is not deep in their shame, right? We're regulated. We need to sit down and put some boundaries in place, right? Some structure, some steps, whatever that looks like. And a lot of times it's the betrayed partner saying, if you get in your shame, then here's what I'm going to do, right? And we go through and we have the steps of what you're going to do. When you can put boundaries like that in place and then you execute them and you hold to them, you're going to find that the resentment goes away. So,
Yeah. The boundaries are for you. It's not punishment. It's not control.
yep,
It's absolutely
safety,
about taking care of me. Okay.
safety.
The next question is, hi, I'm 12 months since discovery and in good sobriety. I've been working with a therapist and EMDR. I have learned self-compassion in my self for shame. Yet recent hard conversations, I failed to show accountability even when prompted. I did not feel I was in the shame at the time, yet now I'm questioning if that was fully true. How long does it take to master shame? Thanks. Lifetime. Lifetime.
Yeah, even as you know, I can see my shame come up. So this is a really interesting thing. It sounds like you've tackled the really hard stuff, but our
Yeah.
shame can still come up. So recognize, how does your shame show up? So I know for me, when I'm in relationship with those close to me, if I'm in a hard conversation and my brain all of a sudden goes, okay, this is a threat, right? And I'm back into my I'm not enough, my shame message, then I get defensive. And so it may not be anger, but I always have a comeback, right? And I'm always defending myself, or I'm pre-defending myself before they even get into everything. I'm just, so we need to recognize, how does my shame show up? Even if it's not the big anger, self-pity, going down the rabbit hole, but in general. Shame can also show up as I have reoccurring thoughts, right? And I'm just really have this negative self-talk that's going on in my head. So I beat myself up internally. Shame can show up in so many ways. Like I told, I work with my groups and I say, okay, when you feel shame, what does it feel like in your body? And I have some people say, oh, it feels like embarrassed and my face gets
Mhm.
hot. So you can kind of recognize your physical body will give you indicators. So again, what I basically said is really step in and reassess, okay, what's the story I'm telling myself, right? And where do I feel it in my body? And what behaviors do I want to do? And what's the associated, shame-based belief that I have? And so in that situation where you fail to show accountability and you step away and you recognize that, then what you do is you do a shame repair, is what I call it. What you're going to do is you're going to figure out where you do need to take accountability. And then you're going to offer to sit back down and go back to that person and say, I recognize my shame was in place. And I need to take accountability for this, 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 and this. And then figure out what are you going to do the next time? So if something like this comes up again, how am I going to do it differently? So I tell anybody I work with, there's going to be times where you think you've got it figured out and then you blow it. So use that as an opportunity, not to beat yourself up, not to go deeper into your shame, but just to sit it and think about it and go, okay, this didn't go well. So what do I need to learn in this moment? How do I need to do it differently? What am I going to do next time? So that's how you can handle that situation you just talked about.
Well, and I love the 12 steps. I use them, and I appreciate that there's an opportunity to make amends. I wish I could say everything was all wrapped up with a bow and poof, never have to worry about that. No, I use those tools still regularly. I just use them faster because I have the ability to notice it quicker. So like Debbie, I applaud where you are and that you're moving forward. They're asking these questions. Like that's a gift that you're going like, hey, maybe I wasn't as accountable. The 10th step is, taking a daily inventory, but we have the opportunity and make amends and promptly, admit our flaws, faults, whatever, the things that we need to make amends for. And that is a pair opportunity too. And you know what? If this was with a partner that was betrayed, you start showing up for that, even if it's a delayed, like it took me a bit to get there. Huge difference. You weren't doing that, 13 months ago. So, that would be a big shift in actions, and partners, like they start seeing actions different, not the lip service, but the actions, that shifts. That's a game changer.
Yeah, and you're only 12 months since discovery.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
the other thing I want to recognize, that the fact that you're even recognizing it, that, I had this hard conversation, I failed to, show up and have accountability. That's really good. So recognize that. Don't make that an excuse, but just recognize this is a process. We do make mistakes along the way, and the only way we learn is through our mistakes, oftentimes. So.
And we don't have to repeat them, and we might repeat some aspect of it, but we can learn, and that's, but welcome to humankind. Like, none of us are perfect, and if the goal is perfection, that ain't happening. That just isn't going to happen. So be kind
Or
to
your
yourself.
shame is telling you that you need to
Yeah,
be,
exactly. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
shame thing. So
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks everyone for the great questions. Let's see, this is the third week. So next week, Matt will be back. And check out all the resources again, guys, if that inner child with Dr. Eddie only offered 2 times this year, it's great stuff. So don't miss out. Don't wait till fall. And anything we can be helpful with, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. We'll do my best to help you find resources. Debbie, as always, love you. Thank you so much.
love you.
See you next time. Bye.